Welcome to the You Can Be Unstoppable podcast. My name is Ewelina Szczeblewska, your host and certified hypnotherapist. In this podcast, I will share with you how to tap into the power of your subconscious mind. I intend to share with you how learning how to use the power of your subconscious mind can help you to create a successful and abundant life with ease, how to connect with yourself while fostering a healthy relationship with your body and mind. Tapping into the power of the subconscious mind will help you to learn how to manage your emotions, become more resilient and present in all of your relationships. Self-love and self-worth are the keys to the kingdom of success and abundance, to happy and healthy life on your terms. Hello everyone, and for today's episode I invited Holly Rogalski to join me, and we had the most fascinating conversation, and I'm sure there is a lot of wisdom for you to pick up on and find something that is going to help you. So Holly is an artist and an intuition coach. She teaches self-doubting overthinkers who feel stuck in indecision to use the power of drawing to access their subconscious wisdom, to think in powerful, revolutionary ways. And that's something that we really discussed, the power of process art and how it helps to access the subconscious mind, how it helps to process emotions in a really powerful way. And through her intuitive drawing process, overthinkers gain the superpower of intuitive certainty for the rest of their lives. And I think that is really powerful because listening to your intuition, to your gut feeling, I feel like it's a little bit discouraged in a modern world. We live in a type A, go achieve more society where listening to your intuition is seen sometimes as a bit of woo, where we prioritize logic and hard facts over an intuitive knowing, which, as far as I'm concerned, is incredibly powerful. So we've touched on many different things. We talked about self-esteem, the importance of self-talk, and how slowing down is the work, how acutely the mind and body is connected, and how listening to our body can save us from basically going unwell, and so much more. So I'm sure that you're going to have a fantastic time listening to this conversation, because I certainly had an amazing time talking to Holly, and we always have so much to talk to when we get together. And without further ado, I'm sure that you will enjoy this episode. Thank you very much, Holly, for agreeing and coming up to my show. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Ewelina.
Awesome. And if I can take us a little bit back to the start, and if you can tell me a little bit about yourself and what made you to start on your journey? What was the motivation? What was going on in your life that you're like, oh, actually, you know what? I want to do something completely different with my life.
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, so I am an artist and an intuition coach, which I feel like I just created that job. For 15 years, I was a doula helping people get through childbirth and a child educator. And I was always very fascinated by the psychological and emotional transition that parents were going through and their shift in identity and how they're going through this major rite of passage, and it transforms, what they think about themselves, what they're learning about themselves. My body, though, last year was letting me know that I could no longer do that work because it is, when I'm called to a birth, it could be 2 or 3 days in a row where I'm awake, and I'm 42 now. It's much more challenging. And I was taking the bits that I really love about helping parents through that and pairing that with something that I've been doing on my own for about 10 or 11 years, which is called process art.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a form of getting into the subconscious mind through drawing. And I realized that there's a lot of overlap between these two interests I have, that there's a lot of neuroscience behind intuition work. There's a lot of somatic, like body work in it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of diving into like, who am I? What do I believe about myself? And then just learning from your subconscious mind, your intuition on a really profound level every time you sit in front of a piece of paper and draw. So that's kind of the long road I got to creating this career for myself.
See, I find this really fascinating because just before we hopped on recording this, but we talk about the fact that I've done a bit pottery in a past and drawing, and you doing process art. And as a hypnotherapist, I'm fascinated by the mind and neuroplasticity and what the unconscious mind is doing for us. So you coming from a completely different angle is fascinating to me, when an art can help us to process and release. So, yeah.
Well, I would say, yeah. And, when I started learning about the subconscious mind a few years ago, that's when I understood what was happening when I was doing process art. I experienced it myself in 2012. I was diagnosed with PTSD from emotional abuse. And at the time, I was really struggling to trust myself. I'd been, have you ever heard the term gaslighting?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my ex-husband was emotionally abusive, and he would gaslight me a lot. He would blame shift a lot. He would be very confusing in conversations. And we were together for 8 years. And through those 8 years, my self-esteem, my identity eroded so much that I could not even make decisions. After I had made him leave the house, there was an experience I had rearranging a room, and I couldn't even decide where to put a bookcase on my own. And I had a breakdown, like just sobbing, like I couldn't make that decision. And through the process of process art, I started to learn to trust my own decisions, to to walk into the unknown, to make a mark on a piece of paper, and to do that for 60 to 90 minutes. And you start to develop self-trust, and you start to listen to your deepest wisdom. But it wasn't until going through some of the trainings you and I have both been through, where I learned about the subconscious mind, that I realized that's what was happening. I actually, at the time, I thought I was listening to God. I thought that I was hearing like divine source when I was drawing, but then my understanding now has shifted over the 10 years, where this was really, and I think labels are just labels.
Yeah.
It could be divine mind. It could be.
If that works for you, then whatever you like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So either way, it feels the same to me. It really feels like hearing from a higher power. And, already the subconscious mind works in images. It works in emotional imagery. Yeah. And so when you are in that visual part of your brain, you're communicating directly with your subconscious, and you're listening to your subconscious for that 60 to 90 minutes. And I mean, if your listeners are like most people, they'll discover that you will experience profound insight every single time you draw in this way. It feels like a superpower.
And you know what, as you were talking, I'm thinking that this is working so well, because when you drawing, you shutting off the external world, the ego, the impact from outside, without constantly being bombarded with the messages and overwhelm. And it's really hard to hear our own thoughts sometimes. And when you're drawing and you are so focused on what you are doing, it's kind of like a form of hypnosis. You are so drawn in what you're doing. You're shutting that external world, the ego, the influence that we keep hearing all the time, and you're just completely listening to yourself.
You're right on. Yeah. And it is, I've been in hypnotherapy sessions like the ones you do, like RTT, and I do find it really similar. My brain waves are slower when I'm drawing, just like when I'm in hypnosis. I find those insights just popping up from my subconscious, like if I've been in RTT. A lot of times when I'm coaching the drawing, I have people use both hands. And so we're crossing the hemispheres of the brain in that way. You're like I said, yeah, that flow state, that brainwave state, And you do lock in, where I even find it difficult to talk afterwards because my verbal mind is shut down. And some people I've worked with even use this as a form of overcoming writer's block or artist block, because you spent, swimming around in that part of your brain for a while. You're going to have so much insight. It's like dreaming awake. It's what it feels like. You just like crazy images coming up, and you just follow that impulse and you let it speak to you, and you step back and you're like, well, this is really interesting what my brain just showed me. And then you write about it and you make the connections, and then you walk away with like the best therapy session of your life.
And I find this really powerful, because I can see this with my clients. And so basically you doing what I do, it's just in a bit different way. I guess more creative way, because you're doing the drawing. But in hypnosis or in silence or in drawing, you are really listening to yourself. And I think that is so important, because we live in such a busy world and we on a go all the time. We don't have the time to slow down. We avoid feeling the emotions and the uncomfortable emotions. And like you said yourself, your body was telling you something. And did you listen? Because I know in the past, I was very good at ignoring what my body was telling me, till it got loud enough for me that I could not ignore it anymore. So when we learn to slow down, whether that is through meditation or drawing or whatever that is, you can actually hear yourself better. All those, moments of wisdoms and ideas and intuitions. Like I did the 4 hour of silence the other day, and ideas were popping into my mind all the time, because I quieted myself enough that my mind was actually, well, now we can push them through, because you are listening.
Yeah. And you're totally right. In our lives, like we sit here on our phones and we scroll, and it's input. And that getting quiet to listen from, like, now we are the source. And I did my 4 hour silence recently too. And I was thinking, like, this is really missing in my life. And if I'm not doing my practice of process art at least once a week, I don't have any other time in my life where I am quiet enough to go inside. And as far as my physical experience, when I had to leave my former job, I got sick for 7 years, and it got worse and worse and worse. And I was just 6 months ago, I was bedbound, because I was ignoring those subtle signals like you talk about. And it got to the point where my body had to scream at me. And you can develop that body blindness where you don't even, I would notice, I would be on the car ride with my husband, and I'd be sitting in the passenger seat. We'd drive for an hour. I would get there and I would realize I'm sitting on my purse strap and I'm uncomfortable, and I didn't even notice it for an hour. Like you got so used to ignoring my signals, And so it's a poverty I think we have in our modern culture right now, to be so cut off from ourselves.
And I think the way we encouraged to live on a daily basis, it kind of encourages that disconnection from self, because we are encouraged to hear to the mind, the logic, and not pay attention to our intuition, to our gut feeling. It's like, just ignore it. When you do, when you make up a decision, maybe logically it makes sense, but you've got that feeling inside. It's like, I don't think that is a good idea, but logically makes sense. So we ignore that. And I know for myself that every time I ignore that intuition, things went the wrong way, because I completely ignored what the body was telling me. Because there is an undeniable connection, from as far as I can see it, between mind and body. They're really interconnected and work in unison. When one is unwell, the other is not working well either.
Yeah. And so in my class, I talk about there's 5 essential elements of intuition. And one of them is a quiet nervous system. And that is actually how I completely recovered from my illness, was addressing my autonomic nervous system and slowing myself down, minimizing stress. And that even meant I wasn't even on my phone. I wasn't watching TV. I wasn't engaging in stressful conversations, like deep breathing, everything I could do to reset that. And the other elements I've seen in my experience to be essential are, so in addition to a quiet nervous system, going into flow state, which is
Mm-hmm.
slowing your brain waves down. And in my class, I teach specific ways to do that, to induce that quickly. Things like staring at light that's coming through trees.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind can't predict that pattern, and so it slows down the brain waves. The sound of water running, staring at a candle. There's all sorts of ways to quickly go into that state. And that is a way to slow down enough to get underneath, like we talk about, that logic brain, that rational brain. Another aspect is recognizing, like, if I'm afraid, what is the source of that fear? And we do exercises in my class that we actually do fear confronting exercises, so they don't have the same strength and hold over us. For instance, I require people to go out in public dressed like someone they judge. And then we come to class dressed that way and acting that way. And it's hilarious. And also really, you start to realize what people you judge have available to them that you are keeping yourself from because you're judging it.
Yeah.
Really interesting. And then, of course, my primary pillar is the creative drawing practice. But I talk about, you just need some sort of channel, whether that is hypnotherapy, self-hypnosis, getting out in nature, going on a walk, like you talked about in your last episode, was really key. And then, or dream work too. Those are all channels you can. And then the fifth pillar, I'm going to have to think about for a second, because this is the one I always forget. Oh, self-esteem, which is so ironic, because how can you trust yourself if you don't even like yourself?
Yeah.
So to say, like, I have this idea, I have this gut instinct, and what if I'm right? You can only do that with positive self-esteem. So in my estimation, those are the things that can be worked on to hone and improve intuition over time.
And I think self-esteem it's just a must for every aspect of your life. Like we've got businesses. How are we supposed to build a business if I don't trust myself, and my self-esteem is not really the part, because then I will doubt myself and my decisions and how I show up. And that's something I've had to work really hard on myself, because I had very little self-esteem. I really did not trust myself. I could not make a decision for a very long time. I was doubting myself, and I was going over and over. But what about this? And if I did that one, what about if this happens? But that kept me from actually making any decisions, because I was so afraid to make the wrong decision, because I didn't trust myself. I didn't see myself as a valuable person who's got a lot to offer. And that is so important, that self-esteem is looked into.
Yeah, I agree. And your last episode had so many good gems about how to do that. And I have like my own tips and tricks and methods I teach in my course, but I'm always looking for, like, what's the whole palette of possibilities? What are all the colors we could paint with to improve someone's self-esteem? So Evelina, like, what did you do? How did you work on it yourself?
Well, for me, primarily was the hypnosis. Because when I decided that I really need to look at my life, because the common denominator was me in everything that was going on. So even to get to this point, it took a lot of time to admit to myself that I need to look at myself. This is something, not going right here. And I was searching and looking. It took me a while to get to hypnosis, because I tried coaches and books and YouTube videos and you name it. I was trying everything, but nothing was really hitting for me. And it was only when I started with hypnosis that I uncovered things about myself from the past, that I've created certain interpretations about myself and how I show up in the world. Things started to shift it for me. And hypnosis is something I use all the time. I listen to audios all the time. I've got probably quite a few on the go, because I listen to them in the morning and in the evening. But it's
you
also
you listen to them. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you listening to like the kind where you get quiet and they're taking you into hypnosis? Or are you listening to like kind of background sort of subliminal suggestions?
No, they're actually taking me to hypnosis.
Okay.
So it's a full-on hypnotic audios. Recently, I started to listen things that kind of running in the background. That's new, something that I'm playing about and seeing. I think it's going to work really well for me. It's like an addition to what I'm doing already. I think it's proving to work really well. So I'm going to see where that's going to take me, because I might encourage my clients to do that as well. So I'm practicing on myself, so to speak. But I also had to take action. So just hypnotic audios wasn't enough. I had to actually go and work on that muscle to prove to myself that all the rewiring that I'm doing is actually also shown in action. So I had to go out and do things to prove to myself that yes, I am changing. And we are all very different, and you need to find something that works for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for me, I think the ball got rolling for me when I did when I worked with a hypnotist for a few sessions. And then over time, I always feel like going into having hypnosis sessions, it's kind of a slow burn. Like I'll start to see weeks and months later, like, oh, I'm different.
Yeah.
And I've actually, my teenager, I've had him do an RTT session. And I've noticed since he had that his patterns are shifting as well. It's incredibly powerful. And I had done daily self-hypnosis inconsistently. And so it wasn't until I did what you're experimenting with now, just listening to, they're not really affirmations, but they're just new self-talk in the background while I was driving. Yeah. And that was one of the first things I did when I was really sick. When I was, I couldn't even get up and make dinner. I couldn't get out of bed except to brush my teeth every day. Like that was just in November, just 6 months ago. The first thing I did was start to listen to those subliminal tracks for 45 minutes a day. It was easy. I could, it was easy to remember. And I slowly started getting better. Actually, I quickly got better. I mean, if I think about it, it was just a month later that I was 100% better. And that's pretty quick for being sick for 7 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I still listen to those tracks or different ones they have different focuses. And now I've realized how impactful working with the subconscious mind is. So then I added in the self-hypnosis in addition to that, because I think when you realize how powerful it is, you get addicted to it. Because I don't know if you remember, I don't know if it was like this when you were growing up. When I was in middle school, having this idea that, I wish I could just take a pill and know karate, or I wish I could take a pill and just learn all the information in this class. It feels like that. Like
yeah, I can see what I mean, because we basically rewiring our mind to what we want. And I wish I knew this earlier. I wish they really taught us this at school. But we can literally, with those subliminal messages in the background and hypnotic audios and things that you might do, like whether that is art or something else, really create a wonderful life for yourself. We certainly do not have to stay with, oh, I just don't feel that great, or I suffer from anxiety, or I'm just, it really doesn't have to be that. Just because we got certain beliefs about ourselves, or we struggle with something, it doesn't have to be like that. But we need to take the action and actually do something about it.
Yes. And that's where I am too, is like, okay, how do I bring this into my 3D world? And I think some of it is it just starts to happen. And I'm almost an observer of, now I've noticed myself responding differently, or I noticed myself being more organized or whatever. And there's also opportunity for, let's start to practice this.
Yeah. And, like you said earlier, change happens differently for different people. So some people change immediately. It's like almost instant. And I've had clients like this when there was almost visible change in the way they looked. It was just clicked for them. But that's not too many people like that. Some people need about a week or two, and you're like, oh yeah, I have changed. I'm thinking differently. The patterns are different. Or it's more of a retrospective thing. So a few weeks needs to pass, and usually someone else needs to point it out to you, or something needs to happen. You're like, oh yeah, I have changed. I'm thinking differently. I'm not doing this anymore. So, sometimes it's a bit more subtle.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
Yeah. I think like this week I had a revelation. I realized that I've got a bad habit, or it's not a bad habit. I just realized that I'm kind of gullible. It makes sense how I ended up in an emotionally abusive relationship. Like I tend to assume the other person is right, and I've been working on that. And as my self-esteem improves, that is improving. But when I realized this, I just had the sense of, well, I know what to do about that. I'll just bring that into my self-hypnosis and I'll work on it. And it's very empowering to know, like, there's something I can do to I don't have to stay stuck.
Yeah. And I think that was a huge shift for me, because I used to thought that I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck in this circumstance and this way of being, and I don't know what to do about it. Now I realize I've never been stuck, because I can absolutely do something about it. And working with your unconscious mind, however you're gonna go about this, it's so powerful. I can't even describe it, how powerful that is, because you can literally rewire your mind to be more confident, more successful, more self-assured, whatever that is that you desire, more confident how you show up in a relationship, or you want to get out of a relationship, you want to feel that confident because you are in an abusive relationship, or you'd also always choose the wrong partners. I mean, wrong in quotation, because what is wrong, again, is a very personal definition. But hypnosis and working with unconscious mind is so powerful for me. And that can also look in various forms. You're doing art, and kind of going back to the 4 hours. When I did the 4 hours, I kind of felt a bit of resistance, but after that I did it, I was like, I almost wanted to go back. So basically later on in the evening, I sat outside and I just sat there for ages, because it was just such a bless. And I think we sometimes maybe forget that there is such a beauty at slowing down. We are so busy, and like you said, we kind of mindless time passing with scrolling social media, or just mindless TV or something just to keep us busy. We're actually, it will be so much productive and beneficial on so many levels to us if we just take 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be much. 15 minutes, just go sit outside and do nothing and just observe.
And I wonder how many of us are so resistant to that, or keep our minds busy because we're in denial about what might come up.
Yes.
Because I realized when my 4 hours, I was thinking, I keep myself busy because some of these things I have not wanted to look at or see.
Yeah.
And that is a way I mean, maybe that is subconscious for me, trying to maintain that comfort zone of, I don't want to go there necessarily, but there's always freedom on the other side of it if you look at it and do something with it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot about this, because we do engage in, whether that is shopping or Netflix addictions, or always keeping ourselves busy with something, whether that is doing something or going out with friends, because we are so afraid to just be left on our own and our thoughts and our emotions. Because they make us feel uncomfortable. But like you said, there's so much freedom at the other end when you actually courageously stop and allow those emotions to come up and just observe them with curiosity. It's like, okay, why am I feeling this? What is this telling me? Rather than like, oh, no, I can't feel this. This is so uncomfortable. I'm just going to go and do something.
Yeah.
Because I've been like that. I kept myself so busy, so I didn't have to look into the fact that I actually felt quite depressed.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that, I think you're more willing to go into that silence when you can trust that your thoughts are going to be supportive of you. But if you've got self-talk that is, negative and harsh and just beating you up, who wants to go there?
Yeah.
But when you learn this way of liking yourself more, of repatterning that self-talk, then it becomes joyous to go there. Like you're not entering into this room where you're just going to
beat yourself up with a long stick.
Yeah. And I think that maybe it is that people don't want to go there because they don't know what to do about it. Like going into that dark place, but I don't have any tools. And they haven't discovered the power of repatterning and subconscious work and learning that there's a different way to feel about yourself and feel about the world.
Yeah, that is that. And I also noticed, I don't know about you, that there's a lot of people who's got this belief that they can't change, that nothing will work for them. Yeah, and that is powerful.
Yeah, for years.
Sorry, I got into your.
Well, I know we're just jumping off each other here, because I think we both definitely agree that until I realized this, it feels like, for one thing, I was so sick for so long, and I was staring down a lifetime of being in bed, and I'd already had conversations with my 3 teenagers that you're going to have to start taking care of yourselves. I can't do it anymore. I can't cook for you anymore. And my husband, it was really hard on our marriage because I wasn't able to work anymore. And I was severely depressed, thinking this is my life now. And I feel lucky because that is how I learned all of this. That's how I realized that there were moments lying in bed, staring out the window, and I realized, I'd been there all day. It's like, I can't control anything right now. I can't even get up without my heart racing. Like I'm sick every time I sit up. I had myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is a fancy term for chronic fatigue syndrome. And I had a moment one day where I realized I can't control anything except my thoughts right now. And I can choose to think differently. And that's when the turning point was for me. And I would not have gotten there without that experience. And so I'm so grateful for it. But I was 42 years old, and so 42 years of my life, I did have that feeling of resignation, defeat, that feeling stuck, feeling like, I was given a bum deal. I was a victim of my circumstances. And I don't even I feel like I've risen above my upbringing in so many ways. I didn't consider myself a victim, but without feeling the empowerment of being able to rewire my brain, I didn't have the tools to realize I could completely take charge of my life. I could change everything. And it does change I'm 100% better now, and I'm starting a business, and it's wonderful.
I totally relate to this because for someone who also felt I'm against the grain and I don't like the way the society tells me to live, and I, left when I was 22. I left Poland, and I was always this kind of rebellious person. But I actually played a victim in a lot of places on my life, and I didn't see it. And that's not, it's like not a nice place to admit to myself, oh, damn, I'm actually a victim. I'm not really showing up fully here. I could do so much better, and I didn't do this right, and I didn't show up here right, and things like this. It didn't take, I didn't take full ownership because I saw myself as this rebel, and I always, I did things against the grain. And I had a bit of resignation like you did. Like I had this I'm kind of changing, but not really, I'm kind of rebelling here, and I did a lot better than, I could have kind of imagined, but it could be so much better, but I don't know if I can do it, and it's like that self-doubt was always there playing in the background. And it's only when you learn how powerful your mind is and you can actually change all this, being started to shift.
Yeah. And now I'm still working on that. I'm uncovering even recently some narratives I still have about being a victim, and ways that I blame things around me still. And but again, I kind of get excited when I realize these. I do get excited when I realize these underlying subconscious beliefs, because I know how to approach it, and I know that, oh man, things are about to get better. Oh, here's a blind spot. Awesome. Now I'm going to be able to improve that. And what level up am I going to find now? And I wonder if rebelliousness, because I totally jive with what you're saying. I was always, self-reliant. I'm going to go do things my way. I left all my family. They're 900 miles away now.
Yeah.
Go do stuff on my own. But I wonder if rebelliousness is another reaction of victimhood. It's like I'm going to overcome this, but it's still because I guess it depends on what your narrative is around that, but I see that in myself. This happened to me, so I'm going to go and prove them all wrong. When, there's maybe some negative sides of that for me that I have to
I can see what you mean. Yeah, I can see what you mean. I certainly had something, but I was stemming from not feeling good enough and that self-esteem. So if someone criticized me, I was like, just watch me. I'm going to show you how good I am. But I was coming from, I don't feel good enough because your comment actually hurt me really much. And I'm going to prove you how wrong you are. So I'm going to now work twice as hard to show you that I actually am really worthy and I can achieve X, Y, and Z. But when I did achieve what I set out to do, it didn't actually make much difference. I was temporarily satisfied with myself. It's like, yes, I got it. But soon enough, I was back to feeling not that actually great about all this, because all of that comes from inside of me. No amount of external validation is going to fix my lack of self-worth or esteem, or not feeling like I'm not good enough. I
Absolutely.
needed to rewire all that and look at this. Okay, how can I make myself feel better and accept myself for who I am and for everything that I've been through? And it's a process. I still, and again, I think that's a big change. You get excited when you find those blind spots and things you've uncovered. It's like, yes, I'm gonna get better now because I've got something else and I can work on it. Where before I was like, oh no, this is making my life miserable. I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I
Where
just get down
now,
on yourself. Like, I can't believe I'm doing that. Oh, I'm
yeah,
so awful. I'm the worst person.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
But
think that's the huge difference, is it? Going
mhm.
from like, oh my God, I'm still doing this. Why haven't changed yet? And oh my God, beating ourselves up with like, oh, great, I got it. Now I can work on it. Completely different energy.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, I mean, when I've talked to my friends about this, like when your self-esteem gets really solid, you just take things way less personally.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh yeah, that's something I'm doing. I probably don't want to do that anymore, but I'm not giving it all that meaning of like, oh, I'm a
Yeah.
person. I can't, like what a terrible person. I'm walking around the world damaging all these people. And it is, that solid ground I keep coming back to. And I do feel like self-esteem work is ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Yeah.
I slip up or I spend too long without listening to my audio or doing my self-hypnosis, I do start to notice those patterns come back in.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it is something, and perhaps after years of it, it'll be different. But for me, it's maintenance that I do all the time.
But at the same time, like I'm kind of very similar age than you. We've spent years, decades wiring those pathways in our minds. It's going to take a bit of work.
Right.
Because yes, we have improved. We see the shift in our patterns. However, it's like you say, it's that maintenance till it becomes so ingrained that we don't have to focus so much maybe on the maintenance.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, I mean, it has been 42 years of being really hard on myself and about 6 months of being kind to myself. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll be a little more patient with it.
Yeah. So I think that's was that as well. It's like being patient and kind to ourselves, but it sounds like you've made a huge progress from only like 6 or 7 months ago. You say you were bedridden. Like
Yeah.
you look pretty healthy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I just worked out before this call. I haven't even showered yet, but I just worked out. I work out every day, which used to be a core value of mine is fitness and taking care of
Mm-hmm.
myself. And I was crying every day because it took me 6 minutes to get up one flight of stairs. I'd
Mm.
have to sit on my butt and scoot up and wait till my heart rate came down, take another, scoot up. It was I felt like I was just a burden, just consuming calories.
Mm.
And it was hard on my family. It was a really dark place. And to be 100% recovered now, I feel like I was risen from the dead. And I'm grateful every day when I can just walk up the stairs. And
Mm-hmm.
even more so, I still cry a lot of times when I'm working out because I never thought I'd be able to do it again.
Yeah.
And that is all the power of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also I did some things to support my gut health, but that really just tipped me over the edge into 100% health. Everything before that was all mindset work.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, luckily my kids are still in the home. They're 12, 14, and 17, so that I can, as much as possible, pass this on to them. And they've witnessed the change, they've
Yeah.
seen, and, and I'm really conscious of how I talk to them now because, we were past that early 7 to 8 years of, where they
Yeah.
really were forming the
Mm-hmm.
memories. However, this will help them the rest of their lives to know that they don't have to be as stuck as I was. They don't have to be victims.
Yeah, absolutely. They're still young enough and they still live with you. And like you said, by observing what happened to you and how you talk to yourself and how you talk to them will absolutely help them. In the way they are going to show up in the world and for themselves, because they saw how powerful the mind is. You create that disease because you were not listening to your mind telling you like, come on, Holly, slow down a bit.
Absolutely.
And then you are healthy again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know,
it's the interplay between, and I do believe your nervous system, well, I know it is, it's a part of your subconscious. It is, those signals are always coming in. Our body is through the vagus nerve and the cranial nerves, reading the environment, giving us information, about what's going on around us, what's happening inside of us. And that is, the more attuned you get, the better that communication pathway is, the more you can hear. And just like you were talking about earlier, just getting really quiet and listening to your body, and like, oh yeah, when you say like, my intuition said this, but I ignored it. Well, that's also a really powerful opportunity for learning, to go back and say, okay, what was I experiencing in that moment that told me something else? And that intuition can grow like a muscle over time. You get better and better at interpreting and recognizing those signals, so that you can, go right to, this is what I need to do next. This is what my subconscious is telling me. And in the beginning, it is a little clunky, and it has to be intentional. But then it, like now, I've noticed that when I'm consistently doing my process art practice, and sometimes I'll do it just 20 minutes a day. I'll just I'll sit down with some crayons and a piece of paper, and it's a 5-step process, but I can do it in 10 or 20 minutes. If I'm doing that every day, I will start to notice my mind is speaking to me in images, that I will have metaphors pop in my head, and it's just, I'm just growing that part of my brain, and it becomes a really open pathway for insight and for healing and for guidance for me.
But intuition is so important, because I remember that in the past, when I was exercising a lot and I was preparing for half marathons and things that I was doing, my body was telling me like, don't do the workout today. And if I ignored it, I knew full well I am going to get unwell, because I've had this pattern where it's like, if I listened and maybe postponed the workout for a day or two because maybe I pushed too much, my body was really tired and I needed the rest, I was fine. But if I pushed it, I was like, no, because I'm stubborn, I'm going to do it. I'm working out. And I didn't listen to my intuition. And my body was telling me like, I got unwell. And I was off the working out probably for a week or two because I pushed it too far. So listening to ourselves is so important. And that happened to me as well when I finished my university. I was a mature student. So I had a lot on my plate, work and university and house and everything else. And it happened to me at the end of the 3rd and 4th year. So especially at the 4th year, I finished the working, submitted my last work, my graduate work. And I didn't know what to do with myself, because I was so busy for 4 years, for 7 days a week, 365 days. I was so busy that when I actually finished all of it, and I was thinking, how on earth did I do all this? Like, I had so much time to myself that I didn't know what to do with myself. And then a few days in, I got so unwell, just like that. I went to work feeling absolutely fine. By midday, I was at the surgery, sent home with the antibiotics because I was barely standing.
I was going to ask, did you get sick? That was going to be my question.
I did. And I got so unwell because I think my body was like, oh, okay, we've slowed down. That means that you are not really so busy. We're going to make sure that you really do slow down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was off, so unwell for a whole week. And it was just so mind-boggling to me, because I was absolutely fine when I went to work in the morning. There was absolutely nothing wrong with me. And by midday, I was barely standing.
Yeah. One thing I started to do when I was getting better is I would pay really close attention to anytime I had a flare, what had just happened. And I, for a long time, I thought it always was physical. Like if I'd gone to a birth and I was awake overnight, or if I was, because a doula's job is very physical. I'm holding people up, I'm squeezing hips, I'm holding a leg. I always get a massage afterwards. But I started to notice that my triggers were often emotional. And my very last flare I ever had, I had been studying for a while, like what caused my flares. And I noticed that I'd felt some pressure from my husband to finish a project. And I pushed it too hard to finish that project that had honestly, it had been waiting for a year to be done. So it needed to be done. But that whole day I had this feeling of like resentment and anger and victimhood towards him. And I realized like, oh, my body is not just telling me about the physical overdoing it. There's also like something unspoken happening. And so, and I think it's tough for people who are chronically ill because they are told so often, this is stress related or this is in your head. And so there's resistance to being able to actually look at that. Because it is so physical. And at a cellular level, like I had tests that proved there was something physically wrong with me. But to say it's stress related, well, that's a wisdom in your body. That's an intelligence that you can look at it in a dismissive way to say, oh, well, you're stressed. And that's a lot of healthcare systems do that to people. They are dismissive because they don't know how to help. But if you look at it as like with respect and reverence that my body is speaking to me, what is it trying to say? Then that's the path to healing.
And that's what I was thinking as you were saying, is like looking at it, what is the body trying to tell me? And it's a shame that that healthcare doesn't really look into it. Like I was into a chiropractor recently, and I was really pleasantly surprised when she asked me, like, what else is going on in your life? And the stresses, like what's up? And I was like, you know what? I'm really happy that you've asked, because I was like, this is the first time someone asked me a question like that. Because mind and body are one. If our body is not functioning well, it's so important to slow down and ask, okay, what is this telling me? What's been going on in my life? Am I, like you say, angry, resentful, stressed? Am I overworking myself? What else is going on?
I think what you're saying, how, we just don't get quiet. And if you're not listening, the subconscious mind in some way will make you listen.
And it never hits you with a massive disease immediately. It will give you subtle hints. There's a bit of a sore arm, maybe a bit tired, maybe you've got a bit of indigestion, whatever that is. Is always starting with subtle and little hints. It's only when we do not listen persistently and we push and work hard is when the body's like, all right, okay, so I've tried this and I've tried that, and I'm gonna make sure that you do slow down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And even like my example, I did slow down because I finished my university. I ended up unwell anyway, because I've abused my body for 4 long years. And it needed time to recover.
Yeah, it's actually amazing it wasn't any worse than that. 4 years is hard on a body, like without breaks at all. It's pretty phenomenal. Like, I mean, and that's what, when they talk about burnout, and so often people who develop chronic illnesses like ME/CFS, which is what I had, they are usually high achievers. They push themselves. They deny their physical experience. And I mean, looking back at my history, it makes a lot of sense. So doing any of this slowing down, any of this, and there's so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to honor ourselves and to slow down and listen within.
And it is, and it's like it's such a shame that we live in a society where it's celebrating working hard and pushing hard, because we're going to pay price for this one way or the other at some point. I was very lucky that it wasn't worse that that I actually finished my university, because I could have got very unwell a lot earlier than that. Maybe that's the stubborn nature of me, that there was nothing that could stop me. Who knows? But it gave me a huge lesson, because I had exactly the same happening to me at the end of third year. Maybe not as badly, because maybe I didn't push myself. There was only 3 years, a bit less work. Fourth year was a lot more stressful, writing your dissertation and everything else. But it's really powerful to slow down and listen to your body. And I'm really more in tune with myself now. I know when my body is telling me, like, okay, you need to really slow down here. Like you're pushing too hard. You really need to take the break.
Yeah.
But that requires listening, reference, and slowing down.
Yeah. And just being curious, I think. I mean, I just dismissed all my symptoms as purely physical. And I I'm curious for you, like after your third year, did you recognize your illness as coming from this, pushing for so long?
Um, a good question. I don't know. That was very obvious to me at the fourth year because I vividly remember thinking to myself, I don't know what to do with myself because I had a whole day to myself. I didn't need to work on anything. I didn't need to write anything. And I was thinking to myself, how on earth did I survive the 4 years? Because I had so much going on. And when I actually stopped, I just couldn't believe that I did it. But this is how powerful we are. I pushed myself so hard to finish. And I can proudly say I got first.
Well, yes, deserved. Wow.
So well deserved. But, I also realized that it probably wasn't very healthy for me. And, I may still pay for this later down the line.
Maybe. You seem very tuned in now. And that's one thing I've had to really, for a while, I was terrified. I'm going to get sick again. I'm going to get sick again. Like if I push it, if I eat too poorly, if I, whatever. And I've had to, at first I realized that narrative is keeping me small and like I will, you can't unlearn profound insight like that. Like that's a wisdom I have now, that I pay attention to my body's signals. I pay attention to anything that could be stimulated by the vagus nerve. So, if I have an upset stomach, if I have a headache, if I, like you said, indigestion, if I notice my breath gets tight, I am now in communication with my body. And as long as I am honoring it, and maintaining that practice. And even when I draw, I'm tuning into how am I feeling as I'm drawing. And I don't, and sometimes I'll do an exercise that's in my class where you draw a self-portrait of how you feel, which is really interesting. In the past, I've drawn things like a barbed wire torso or an anvil head. And that's just the subconscious speaking, but it helps you tune into what are the sensations in my body. And because you're in that subconscious place of working with images, you get tons of insight doing that sort of. So especially with people who have physical issues, the drawing can be profoundly healing to open that communication again.
It is, and it kind of just reminded me about something. So back when I started doing hypnosis, I had a client who came to me because she was struggling with severe migraines. And she was in her 50s, and she had them since she was about 17. So that's a very long time to having incredibly powerful migraines that were stopping her from living. She tried just about anything. I was out there, and nothing really worked. Some things work better than others, maybe they elevated the symptom a little bit for some time, but she was struggling with that. And when we had a session, it was so powerful because she created a migraine. Her dad had migraines. So her belief was, well, I'm going to get it anyway. And she wanted to be like her dad. And her dad had migraines. And her dad was away a lot, working abroad. And other thing was, she believed that her mom loves her brother more than her. And he gets a lot more attention than she does. So migraines was a kind of a scream for help, like, look at me, I need your attention. Because when she had migraines, her mom was paying a lot more attention to her, giving her the love and affection that she desired and craved for.
Yeah. This is what you talk about, that secondary gain. What is this? Because when I really got humble enough to look at my secondary gain and realizing that for me, my illness was keeping me from working, and work was something I'd been burned out on for 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of secondary trauma in the birth world. There's a lot of things you're witnessing. It's very hard on your nervous system, and your psyche and et cetera. Like for her to even go to the place of saying, like, I manifested this, that does take humility. That means you have to step out of victimhood.
Yeah.
I
But
mean, that's
it was really interesting because before we actually had hypnotic session, she was like, no, my relationship with my parents were amazing. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But it turned out it wasn't so amazing because she really missed the dad. That was away a lot. She wanted mom's attention. And we only had one session and the migraines disappeared because she realized why she had them in the first place. And she didn't need them anymore because she can look after herself. She doesn't need the love and affection the way she was when she was 17. And she got a lot of added benefit. She didn't feel as stressed at work. Work wasn't bothering her as much. She's lost quite a bit of weight as well, so that boosted her confidence. So there was all the things that happened in her life as a result of that.
wow.
I mean,
Wow,
she looks like $1 million at the moment. It's not the same woman.
Yeah, I think this is one. So this is the limitation of the drawing. Like, I think the drawing has its own very special place because it's in all of these subconscious work I know of. It's the one where you are listening the most. Instead of imprinting upon the subconscious, you're listening from the wisdom for so long. But I do find that when I'm working with an outside hypnotist, and I've worked with 3 at this point in my life, there is just the interaction of having another person. I think you uncover these patterns so quickly.
Yeah.
And having that guidance, it's so much more efficient than just listening to self-hypnosis, which I do 3 times a day. I'm still very much committed and affected by, but at working with someone like yourself, I mean, it's just, it improves your life like 100 times every time. Yeah, you can quickly become addicted.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
All right, amazing. I mean, I could talk to you forever.
I know. Every time we talk, we end up going really long. I love talking to you too, all across the world.
Yes, exactly, because we are in 2 different continents. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you, and I love this conversation. And I think we just went all over the place, but there was a lot of wisdom in here for people listening. And I hope they're
taking a lot of value.
Yeah, I hope you will take whatever you need and whatever is going to serve you the most, and you can discard the rest. That's absolutely fine. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this podcast, I would like to ask you to leave a positive review explaining how this episode helped you to improve your life. I ask you to do this because this will help other people to improve their lives as well. Share and spread the love all around you. Raise your vibrations to improve your life. If you would like more transformational content like this, connect with me on Instagram. You can find a link in the description of this podcast, and I'll see you over in the next episode.